Member for Clark.
Good evening, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, in 14 years in this place, I have never heard so much misinformation, disinformation and downright drivel as I've heard during the opposition's contribution regarding phasing out the live sheep export industry. Like the claim I heard from the member for Maranoa about the conditions on the live export vessels. Heavens, Deputy Speaker, it sounded like he was describing a carnival cruise. The conditions were described as so luxurious for the sheep. This is just patent nonsense, Deputy Speaker. The reality, in fact, about the conditions on the vessels are to be found in the Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry's own website, where, among other pieces of very valuable information, there is reports from the independent observers that travelled on 53 journeys between 2018 and 2023. Those independent observers found that 64% of the reports they filed, 64% of reports documented indicators of heat stress ranging from increased respiratory rate to sheep with extended necks and extreme heat stress. 30% of the reports from those 53 independent observers reported marked heat stress, measured as open-mouth panting or worse. Deputy Speaker, activities inconsistent with the Australian standards for the export of livestock were noted in approximately 70% of the reports from the independent observers cited by the Agriculture Department. The inconsistencies with ACEL included poor loading practices, poor handling of sheep, poor management of ill sheep, lambing on board, wool length greater than 25 mm leading to a higher risk of heat stress, loading of sheep with horns that obstruct access to feed and water, and sheep loaded with pre-existing health issues and injuries. In other words, Deputy Speaker, any claims that the conditions on the vessels are like a cruise liner are patent nonsense. And then, of course, there's the numerous exposés over the years, and who can forget the most shocking exposé, probably the Awasi Express, with lambs born on board, drowning in the faeces and the urine and the filth on the decks of that vessel. And the claim, Deputy Speaker, that no country has better animal welfare standards than Australia. Well, Deputy Speaker, every country that doesn't participate in the live animal export trade has better animal welfare standards than us. For example, New Zealand banned the live animal exports years ago. There's currently a bill before the UK House of Commons that would ban the live export from the UK. Germany is tightening safeguards. So it is patent nonsense, Deputy Speaker, to maintain this fiction that Australia is leading the world in animal welfare standards. We are not. You've only got to look at these figures from the Agriculture Department and to compare us with countries that have banned the trade. And then there's that ridiculous claim, Deputy Speaker, that the live sheep export trade is somehow growing, when in fact it's 90% smaller it has shrunk by 90% over the last 2 decades. And the only reason there's been a small bump in recent numbers is exactly that, Deputy Speaker, just a small bump in the numbers. But when you look at the trend line since 2003, it has been down, down, down and down. In fact, WA live sheep exports are now valued at now less than $100 million, and that is less than 2%, not much more than 1% of the value of Australian sheep meat exports. What is growing, Deputy Speaker, is exports of processed sheep meat, now valued at almost $4.5 billion. That's right. The live trade is worth less than $100 million. The processed sheep meat trade is worth something in the order of $4,500 million. And we are now supplying more than 50% of the global sheep meat trade. And is this going to the Middle East, Deputy Speaker, or is this another fiction that customers in the Middle East will only buy live animals? Well, processed meat to the Middle East is going up in the United Arab Emirates. It's going up in shipments to Kuwait. Our sales to Qatar are going up. Our sales to Jordan are going up. Our sales to Saudi Arabia are going up. In other words, customers in the Middle East and North Africa are craving our high-quality processed sheep meat, be it frozen or chilled. And what of this very significant claim? And I should add, I have all the respect in the world for our farmers, but there's this claim that the ban will destroy their farms and destroy the towns in those farming regions. Well, I would say to those farmers, stop listening to the nonsense from the opposition and face the reality that your industry is in terminal decline. And in fact, it's the politicians who want to help you pivot to a different mix on the farm, different practices on the farm, to provide $107 million of assistance, Deputy Speaker, so that farmers and towns that are to do with the fact is that the industry is in terminal decline. And if people in this place really care about the farmers and don't want to be just using the farmers to score cheap political points in this place, then they would get behind helping the industry to pivot, for the farmers to change the mix on their farm, to change the practices on their farm, so that rather than just crashing in to the end of the industry with no preparation, with the government's plan, they have 4 years to slowly transition across and be ready for the future. Deputy Speaker, I don't make this point lightly, but it seems to me that the opposition, and in particular the National Party members, they're desperate for some issue to latch onto to look like they're fighting for farmers. But the reality is, by fighting for the farmers on this issue, what they're doing is letting the farmers down by preventing or slowing up their transition to alternate mix of farming on the property. Of course, one of the most bizarre claims by the opposition is that only a minority of people want reform. I mean, this is just a crazy proposition. In fact, polling conducted by McCrindle Research in May 2023 found that 71% of Western Australians supported the phase-out, including 69% of Western Australians in rural and regional areas of the state. So, Deputy Speaker, it's not a case of how many signatures on a petition. It's about proper research done by proper research companies, which are finding that almost three-quarters of Western Australians, almost 70% of Western Australians in rural and regional areas, want this trade done away with. And national polling, also conducted by McCrindle Research in 2002, placed support for the phase-out across the whole country at 78%. In other words, this is a trade that is not only systemically cruel, not only is not in Australia's economic best interest, it has very low levels of support. So I'm delighted. I'll give credit where it's due. Here's an issue where the federal government is actually in step with the wishes of the vast majority of Australians, and I applaud them for that. Now, I will say to the opposition, there are two claims that have been made in various members' contribution that do have merit at face value, and I want to just dwell on those for a moment. There is the point that some people in the Middle East want live sheep for cultural or religious reasons. I agree. That is an entirely valid point to make. But to suggest that not selling sheep to those people is going to break the back of our sheep meat export industry is just patent nonsense. Less than 2% of Australia's sheep meat exports are live sheep. And I'd make the point, if these people are going to be provided with live animals, why on earth would they come from just about the furthest place on the planet and have to endure just about the longest sea voyage that any animals could have to endure? What about those people sourcing their stock from Spain, Romania, other nearby countries that, as best I can tell, don't have any animal welfare standards worse than Australia and are much closer at ensuring that the journey that those suffering animals go on is much shorter? And of course, the other point, Deputy Speaker, made by the opposition, and I see merit in this, at face value merit in this, that customers will just get their live sheep from somewhere else. Now I offended honourable members in this place recently when I likened that to the drug dealers' defence. Now I wasn't calling the members of the opposition drug dealers, but we all know that is the defence used by drug dealers, that if they don't get the drugs from us, they'll get the drugs from somewhere else. Well, I don't buy that. You know, we need to, as a country, act with integrity and do the right thing and to set an example for the rest of the world about what is the right thing. And if we want to genuinely get behind our primary producers and to grow their exports to the rest of the world, then we need to do everything we can, Deputy Speaker, to foster our reputation as a clean, ethical primary producer. That if you buy anything from Australia, it has been produced in the best country in the world, to the best standards in the world, and it's been produced with real integrity. That's what will grow our primary production, not by being seen as a pariah on the world stage that continues to send animals virtually to the other side of the planet in some of the most shocking conditions imaginable. Deputy Speaker, I applaud the government for pushing through with this. I know it's not easy. Yes, I want the ban to be in place sooner. And yes, I do want to shut down the beef cattle export trade. I do. And I'll turn my mind to that now and keep campaigning on that. So it is a difficult policy area for reform, so I will applaud the government, and I won't be moving any amendments, even though I'd like to see a shutdown sooner than 4 years. The bottom line, Deputy Speaker, the bottom line is that the live export trade is systemically cruel. That anyone would come into this place and dispute that beggars belief. They either haven't been paying attention or they are trying to fool people who might be listening in. It's not in Australia's best economic interest. Surely we would be better to raise the sheep, the beef cattle, and to process them in Australia. We already have a lot of spare capacity in our abattoirs, and where we don't have enough capacity to be processing these sheep, then we should be building capacity. And if we have trouble getting workers for these abattoirs, then we should work out how to fill those jobs. And there's an important role for government into the future. And it has little public support. As I say, that research by McCrindle Research nationally puts support for a phase-out at 78%. And I say phase it out because history shows that the fundamental problems in the industry just can't be remedied. You just can't get numbers on these vessels so low to achieve genuine animal welfare and for those voyages to be profitable. They will always be overcrowded as far as animal welfare goes. Remember the filth, Deputy Speaker. Remember the suffering. Remember the barbaric conditions on the media revelations that we've seen over recent years. It's not a luxury cruise liner, as the opposition would have you believe. No, Deputy Speaker, I make the point again. The only way to end the cruelty is to end the trade. Full stop. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.